Please help support the channel by visiting our Amazon store, affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo, this is 3 Buck Theater, and today is the 14th of September 2017, and there is a lot to cover today. But first, I want to talk a bit about Terminator 6. We have confirmation now that Tim Miller is in fact going to be directing the next iteration in the franchise. He will be helming effectively what's being known as Terminator 6. And we're going to get probably more information on this coming up in the next couple days at an event on September 19th, where James Cameron and Tim Miller are going to be at the Paramount lot in Los Angeles for a special screening of Terminator 2 in 3D, that new 4K remaster, as well as doing a live Q&A. So I'm sure when that whole thing kicks off in just a couple days, people will be waiting to ask all the questions. Will Schwarzenegger be involved? Will Linda Hamilton be back involved? Will Edward Furlong be involved? How will this tie into Terminator 2? Will this even remotely touch upon the previous few movies that have come out since 2003 that have kind of jumped around the Terminator timeline? Will this be a direct sequel to Terminator Genesis? So on and so forth. Now, my honest theory is this. It's going to be not Terminator 3 as a continuation of Judgment Day, but probably going to be Terminator Genesis 2. And then finishing up whatever the other two they had in mind. It only seems to make sense at this point to continue that particular storyline. The reason why I say that is mostly because the movie was in fact profitable overseas. Now, James Cameron has been relatively supportive of the franchises over the years, of the different attempts at trying to reboot it, but you could probably tell that at some point he was just fatigued, like the rest of us, with wanting to see this thing kick off in a well-defined fashion. We had the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which was a well-done show, but Fox ended it after 2 seasons without giving us a proper conclusion, because it's Fox, and of course they did. But we also know that Cameron will want to be in control of this once again. 1991 was a long time ago, 26 years since he's had control over this franchise, and so we'll have to wait and see. I am a little bit concerned for Tim Miller's involvement, just given the fact of what happened with Deadpool 2, where there was creative differences between Ryan Reynolds and Tim Miller about what they wanted to do with the sequel and who they wanted to cast as Cable, which led to Tim Miller exiting. Now, that first film was one that Tim Miller and Ryan Reynolds could basically do whatever they wanted. Fox tossed him $50 million, gave him the run of the park, said, have your fun, we'll see what happens. And then the sequel problems happened. And if this is not a direct reboot of Terminator or a direct continuation after Judgment Day, then we're probably going to run into some issues where James Cameron might have a specific vision in mind for Terminator 6, and Tim Miller may have something else in mind entirely, and that could cause some friction. But at the same time, I think Tim Miller's a smart enough guy to know that you got to play ball from time to time. You have to make sure that when you are working with this kind of property in the studio system, you have to play by certain rules. We've seen directors like Len Weissman at this point walk away from more projects than he's actually directed, and when he has directed, has been lukewarm at best. So it's one of those things where I think Tim Miller will definitely play ball, because he'll want to regain some faith within Hollywood. When you walk away from a high-profile project over creative differences, it does sting a little bit, and it does hurt your prospects going in and making something else, because people are going to wonder, oh, are you going to do the same thing here that happened there? Whether it is by your fault or not, you still left the project. We've seen this with Cary Fukunaga and It, how he walked away from that project mere weeks before production began. We've seen this time and time again with different directors. Look at the recent situation with Lucasfilm. We've seen a bunch of stuff that's that is probably keeping Tim Miller on the straight and narrow with James Cameron, so he can get this thing done and then get his career back on track. Okay, so 20th Century Fox today dropped the trailer for Red Sparrow. This, of course, is coming out the day before Jennifer Lawrence's new movie Mother hits theaters, and they're hoping that Darren Aronofsky's grindhouse-esque horror film starring Lawrence will draw in a large crowd, and therefore they can then market this this spy thriller. Basically, Red Sparrow is kind of like a sexier version of the Black Widow story, just starring a better actress. It's basically what it is. You watch the teaser for it. It shows her sitting in a room looking kind of weak and or meek and scared and unsure. And here comes a guy, we never see his face. He puts money and a cell phone down on the dresser, clearly indicating that she is a hooker, tells her to take off her dress. Then he gets killed. And then it's just a montage of shots of Jennifer Lawrence dressed as different things and getting the backstory of the SPARROW program, which basically was, the same plot line for Natasha Romanoff and the Avengers Age of Ultron. Again, it's like the same plot, almost verbatim, it feels like. And then now just starring Jennifer Lawrence. But the premise on Wikipedia simply has it listed as a Russian spy falls for a CIA officer and considers becoming a double agent. So that's it. But it's based on a book. It's based on a book by the same name. They just wanted to get a teaser trailer out now in order to be able to capitalize on Jennifer Lawrence, her new movie coming out, and being able to use that as a bit of a springboard for the marketing, which I don't blame them for. But the trailer itself looked interesting. It's going to be, I think, Jennifer Lawrence's attempt at a sexy erotic thriller, something to kind of reset herself as a bit of a sex symbol now that she's 27 years old. She's kind of getting out of that age Hollywood would generally consider someone a sex symbol. And I know that sounds horrible to say out loud. That is the truth. So this is one of those moments where she's going to be trying her hand at probably not nude. She's probably not going to do nudity at all. I mean, even after the fappening happened a couple of years ago, she felt utterly violated by that. I don't blame her one bit. But she won't be probably doing nudity, but she'll be doing a lot of very erotic, very sexy imagery. There's that scene of her at the bar with her legs spread and she's got the thigh-high stockings on. And I'm not going to comment on that direct, other than just, yeah, it was good. And then her in the bathing suit, very much, featuring her cleavage as she's, trying to seduce somebody. And that's even what they say in the trailer is that, oh, these agents are taught to seduce men, get them into intimate settings, and then kill them. That's basically going to be her entire angle, essentially making her a Black Widow of sorts, right? I mean, the comparison between the characters is one of those things where it's too much. It's too much at this point. And Scarlett Johansson has got to be right up Kevin Feige's ass with her cell phone right now, going like, where is my movie? They're making my movie at a different studio, you son of a bitch, and going from there. But I will say it does look well shot. Francis Lawrence is the director. He did the final 3 Hunger Games films, which I felt he brought a very good look to those. So I think he's solid for the choice. Again, this looks like an erotic thriller, and I'm not against seeing that. So it comes out in March of 2018, and I'll be there. I'll definitely be there. Okay, Hellboy gets a release date. We knew this was coming. We know this art's going. I think they're in production right now, as evidenced by this particular photo of David Harbour in full-on Hellboy attire, which I have to say, damn, that looks pretty good. That dude clearly got ripped for the role, but the only problem I have with it is that it's Ron Perlman, just 20 years younger. They don't even really make an attempt to hide the fact that the two are very similar feature-wise in this particular regard, and that doesn't necessarily bother me. I just would rather them actually make Hellboy 3 to give us a conclusion of that storyline instead of rebooting it and having him fight the Blood Queen. Now, the general plotline of the film is that it's about Hellboy going to England, where he must battle Nimue, Merlin's consort, and the Blood Queen, but their battle will bring about the end of the world, a fate he desperately tries to turn away. Kind of similar to what we saw in the first Hellboy movie, where his hand is a key which would bring around the end of the world. But, again, most of the time Hellboy fights certain things that are trying to take over the world to some extent. So that kind of is a general piece of these storylines. There's nothing wrong with that. But it just based on the look of David Harbour in the costume or in the getup, it does seem that Neil Marshall's film will definitely have an interesting tone to it. Probably a lot more darker and grittier than what Guillermo del Toro did, which is nothing wrong with that. I'm okay to see that. But the thing is, the release date has now been pushed from the fall of 2018 to January 11th, 2019. Now, that release date actually kind of freaks me out, because January is not generally a solid time for new releases like this. The last couple Underworlds came out in January, they crashed and burned. Resident Evil came out in January, it did okay, but otherwise it kind of crashed and burned. This year you had Split come out in January, do surprisingly well. I do believe Get Out also came out in January, which did surprisingly well, but those are different kinds of films, you know, that are appealing to different kinds of audiences. And it's one of those things where January is generally a dead zone. But if it and its success is any speculation or anything for this, then it really goes to show you that you don't need to have a movie come out in the in the summer season or the holiday season in order to make a lot of money. And it could be that they chose January 11th, 2019 as a way of getting around whatever's coming out in December or leading into December. They just saw maybe it's a crowded timeline for release dates. I'm not too familiar right now with what's coming out next fall. I do believe there's probably going to be a new Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And some other stuff as well. I don't quite know. But they probably looked at what they've got and said, let's just push it back a few weeks, get it past the holiday season, get it into January, and then we can hopefully turn a profit then. And it's not entirely out of the question. Certain movies do well on Valentine's Day. Around that time, February starts kind of picking up the numbers. And like I said, with this year, with Split and Get Out coming out in January, those both did well, but those were also both smaller budgeted films. I don't know the budget on this movie, so I don't quite know what the over-under is going to be for this just yet. It's a ballsy move. It's a risky move. And I wouldn't be surprised if before then they push the release date out even further, maybe to either February or March, or maybe all the way back into October of 2019. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens too. Okay, so jumping over into this could be industry news, but this could also just be wild speculation. Stan Lee was at the Wizard World Nashville this past weekend, and he was talking about Marvel and Marvel Studios and X-Men and 20th Century Fox and Fantastic Four, and he let this real interesting nugget slip, saying, sooner or later, they're going to get the rights back to all our characters. They're working on it, and they're still making X-Men movies and stuff. Don't worry about it. You'll get more Marvel superheroes that you have time to look at in the next few years. Now, we know that Kevin Feige has not been openly talking about trying to get the character rights back from 20th Century Fox, but we do know that the deal with Sony was a success. And given the fact that X-Men Apocalypse failed to reach the market share that Days of Future Past had, so on and so forth, and all the troubles we've seen with like Gambit and everything else at Fox, and Fantastic Four completely tanking, we know that there's probably some behind-the-scenes conversations, right? I've said this before, and I'll say this again. Simon Kinberg is the kind of like the Joss Whedon of Fox's cinematic universe with Marvel characters, and he is also heavily involved with Lucasfilm and their Star Wars Rebels and a few other things over there. So he's kind of like that bridge, and I have a feeling that the connections between the companies are way more nepotistic and cronyistic than we like to think, and those discussions have probably come up. I would say that there is absolutely no way in hell that those conversations have not come up at some point in time or another. Nothing to the extent of what we might ever find out, from like a Sony hack situation, but probably looking at how Sony has handled it, what they've been able to do, Fox is probably on board. But Fox has got a little bit more up their sleeve in terms of profitability than Sony did, right? Fox has Deadpool, Fox has Logan. Both did great, both did awesome with the box office and with critics, and people loved them, and they're giving us Deadpool 2, and they're doing New Mutants as more of kind of like a standalone kind of horror film, and they're trying different things, I think, to try to figure out how to make their properties connected but still standalone-ish and still profitable, while also still maybe trying to figure out how to do the Marvel thing. It's a hard bag when you're trying to do it all. Marvel from the get-go was a connected cinematic universe, and while they might have deviated a few times, like the timeline in Spider-Man Homecoming makes no damn sense at all. But anyway, that doesn't really matter. They've generally stuck on the straight and narrow. So I have to wait and see what's going to happen with this. But I wouldn't be surprised if Disney does get the rights to Fantastic Four back. Disney and Marvel have done everything they can to effectively kill that franchise in terms of comics and everything else. So, I mean, they've been running it into the ground. X-Men needs Dark Phoenix to be a win. But I have a feeling that Dark Phoenix will probably maybe have a connection over to the MCU at large, especially if we start moving into the cosmic side of things, especially if, there's like, let's say Thanos can open up the reality gem and go into different dimensions. Then we find out, oh, hey, there's another alternate Earth. Oh, what's this over here? oh my god, it's X-Men and it's Fantastic Four and it's all of these things together, and then they're able to jump over through, you know, a dimensional portal somehow after the fact and kind of help each other out. And if you think that's impossible, it's been working on the CW with Supergirl and the rest of the Arrowverse. So that is very much something they could argue. That is very much something that has been proven to be overlooked by fans in terms of continuity, and they've been accepting of it. So it's something I could definitely see happening in the near future. But at the same time, Stan Lee's in his mid-90s at this point, and who knows how much information he has. But we're now just waiting for the confirmation from both Marvel Studios and 20th Century Fox about some deal. And I do think it's going to happen, because we do know that Legion, the show coming out on Fox this fall, probably has, I think that one is a kind of a joint venture between the two. Or not Legion, but The Gifted, sorry, Legion on FX. I don't know if that's connected, but I do know that Marvel Studios will be tying in to one of these Fox shows. While maybe not connected to the greater X-Men world at large or the greater MCU at large, it is a joint venture, which will then, if profitable and if popular and if it works out well, they will move that in to some deal for the future. Because it just at this point feels like the most beneficial move they could make for both companies involved. And finally, guys, some Lego Movie 2 news. This is something that I wasn't expecting for quite some time, mostly because with Lego Ninjago coming out in a couple days, you figure Warner Brothers would be wanting all press on that and not even wanting to have anyone talk about Lego Movie 2, because they're still in pre-production. They haven't started making the movie yet. But we do know that the movie comes out on February 8th, 2019. So only a couple weeks after Hellboy. Again, that's right around the sweet spot. It's when Lego Movie came out back in 2014 and Lego Batman came out in 2017, right around those same weekends. So they know that those are profitable. So why they're pushing Lego Ninjago for an end of September release is odd. They should just have that become, you know, their February release schedule and see what happens there. Anyway, not really the point. The point is, what we did here is that Phil Lord and Chris Miller are coming back into the fold. Them being fresh off of their Han Solo firing, have come on in and are going to be reworking the script with Chris McKay, who was the director of the Lego Batman movie, and they're going to be helping really kind of flesh out the plot line of the Lego Movie 2. This time it's going to focus more about the boy's sister in Duplo. We saw Duplo at the end of the first movie, and they're going to be kind of toying with that. So here's what the plot line is that we know of for Lego Movie 2. Chris McKay says, the Duplo represents Finn's sister, Finn being the little boy from the live action. The Duplo is her. The man upstairs says, you got to play with your sister. That's the thing you've got to promise me. I'll let you play with my world, but now you've got to let your sister come in and play with your world. Now she's coming in, and that's the major thing the movie is about. What's different and similar about gender when a boy plays versus how a girl plays? What kind of stories are there? Chris and Phil are super fucking smart and really thoughtful and sensitive writers. These kind of questions and the interesting ideas they're getting into with this movie, it's going to be like the first Lego movie was, where it's about something else that's really profound. I'm really excited about where the movie is going to go, because it's about these things that are actual notions that people have that might even be unconscious biases, or people don't even realize that that's the way they're looking at the world. You can do that in a movie like this and still have it be a great musical with fun songs and have action, have all the other crazy things we're going to get into with that movie. It's going to be a really special movie. Okay, so it's going to focus on how a boy plays and how a girl plays, and going to talk a bit about gender on this one. That's going to be interesting, especially when it gets closer to coming out and all the think pieces that are going to touch upon this and are going to extremely tear it apart. But I do agree, though, that Chris Miller and or Phil Lord and Chris Miller are very talented writers and can tackle these kind of subjects. Their work on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs I thought was very profound. I love their work on Lego Movie. I love the 21 Jump Street movies. I do believe that these guys are very gifted, very talented to tell these kind of stories from a very nuanced perspective. And I'm excited to see what they do with this. I thought Lego Movie was wonderful. I thought they tackled some good subject matter with that in a way that was not only entertaining for the family, but also thought-provoking after the fact about how we kind of view our toys and everything else. I'm coming into the notion of fatherhood in a few months, and I'm looking around like at my video games and my collectibles, and I'm just like, oh, you know, like I'm gonna have to put these things away or put them high up so they don't get they don't get destroyed by my child who is going to want to play with them because I like them. And that is something that I've been thinking a lot about. And the Lego movie actually is one of the things that I was kind of thinking about along with it. So again, it's kind of like that unconscious aspect that might come up down the road. So I'm curious to see what they do with this. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt when discussing identity politics in a child's film, because I don't look at what they do as being heavy-handed or shoehorned in these regards. But that being said, anything could happen. And I'm pretty sure certain cultural warriors out there are going to have lots to say about this. And it could get very messy very quick if they decide to jump on it ahead of actually seeing it. And then the other side jumps back before actually seeing it to kind of like, you know, battle it out. And as I'm talking about it, I can already see it happening. So look for that coming at the beginning of 2019. All right, guys, that wraps up this episode of 3 Buck Theater. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. Be sure to leave your comments below. If you haven't already, thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, check back often, maybe not daily, but pretty often for new videos from me, where we talk about movies, we talk about television, reviews of TV shows, all sorts of entertainment stuff that I love to do on this channel. Thank you guys again. I'll talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day. Peace out.